Alien Queen gave him a wish she couldn't refuse, her priceless reaction when he chose her. Frank Meiser shifted his grip on the M4 combat rifle, eyes scanning the ornate halls of the Celestial Palace. The black tactical vest felt heavy against his chest, loaded with enough ammunition to start a small war. Not that he expected to need it. This was supposed to be a simple protection detail for some alien diplomat. "You seem tense, human," said Ambassador Thyron, the tall humanoid alien beside him. His silvery skin gleamed under the crystalline chandeliers. "The Australians are a peaceful people." "With all due respect, sir, peaceful people don't usually need armed escorts," Frank replied, keeping his voice low. His well-trimmed beard and mustache did little to hide his skeptical expression. The ambassador chuckled. "Ah, but they specifically requested a human guard. Your kind has quite the reputation after the Battle of Proxima." Frank nodded, remembering how a single human fleet had held off 3 alien armadas. Humanity's reputation was well earned through blood and fire. The grand doors ahead opened, revealing the throne room. Frank's breath caught at the sight. The chamber was massive, with towering crystal columns and a ceiling that seemed to capture the very stars themselves. But it was the figure on the crystalline throne that drew his attention. Queen Thindra of the Australians was breathtaking. Her light blue skin seemed to shimmer, complementing the flowing red gown that left her shoulders bare. But it was her hair that captivated him. Waves of bright crimson that cascaded like liquid fire. "Welcome, Ambassador Thyron," her voice rang clear across the chamber, "and to your human companion." Frank maintained his professional demeanor, even as her piercing silver eyes studied him. He noticed the subtle tension in the room, the way the alien guards gripped their energy weapons just a bit tighter at the sight of him. The meeting proceeded with the usual diplomatic pleasantries, but Frank's instincts were screaming. Something felt off. His eyes constantly scanned the room, noting every shadow, every movement. That's when he saw it, a slight shimmer in the air near one of the upper balconies. "Get down!" Frank roared, lunging forward. His body slammed into the queen just as a plasma bolt seared through the space where she'd been standing. The throne exploded in a shower of crystal shards. Training took over. In one fluid motion, he rolled to his feet, rifle already tracking. The active camouflage system of the assassin flickered as they tried to retreat. Frank squeezed the trigger twice. The first shot disrupted the cloaking field. The second found its mark. A figure in black armor crashed to the floor, purple blood pooling beneath them. The chamber erupted into chaos as guards rushed in. But Frank maintained his position, shielding the queen with his body. "Stand down!" Queen Thindra's voice cut through the pandemonium. She rose gracefully, though Frank noticed her hands trembling slightly. "It seems I owe you my life, human." Frank lowered his weapon but remained alert. "Just doing my job, Your Majesty." "No," she said, her voice taking on a formal tone that made everyone in the room freeze. "By our most sacred laws, when one saves the life of the queen, they are granted a single wish, anything within my power to give." A murmur ran through the assembled aliens. Frank could feel the weight of tradition settling over the room like a heavy cloak. "Your Majesty," he said, brown eyes meeting her silver ones. "I respectfully decline." "You cannot," she interrupted, a hint of steel in her voice. "It is not merely tradition, but law. To refuse would bring shame upon both our peoples. Name your wish. Human." Frank looked at her then, really looked at her. Beyond the alien beauty and regal bearing, he saw something familiar in those eyes. Loneliness. Power was isolating, no matter the species. Maybe it was the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. Maybe it was the way the starlight caught in her crimson hair. Or maybe it was just that human tendency to do the impossible that had carried their species to the stars. "I wish," he said clearly, his voice carrying through the silent chamber, "to be with you, Your Majesty." The silence that followed was deafening. The queen's face went from shocked and outraged in an instant, her blue skin darkening with what he assumed was their version of a blush. "You dare," she began, but tradition had her by the throat. She'd made the offer public, bound by laws older than her reign. "Take him to my chambers," she ordered through gritted teeth. "I will deal with this presumption personally." As the guards led him away, Frank caught Ambassador Thyron's expression, a mixture of horror and admiration that seemed to say, only a human would be crazy enough to try this. Frank just smiled. After all, humanity hadn't gotten where it was by playing it safe. The royal chambers were exactly what Frank expected from an advanced alien civilization. A perfect blend of technology and artistry. Crystalline walls pulsed with soft bioluminescence, creating an otherworldly ambience that made his tactical gear feel absurdly out of place. He stood at ease, hands clasped behind his back, as Queen Thindra stormed into the room. Her crimson hair seemed to float with ethereal energy, matching her barely contained fury. "Of all the presumptuous, arrogant," she began, then stopped, taking a deep breath. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Exercised my right under your laws to make a wish," Frank replied, keeping his tone carefully neutral despite the smile tugging at his lips. "You've made a mockery of our most sacred traditions." She circled him like a predator, her red gown flowing behind her. "Why? Was this some calculated political move? A human attempt to gain leverage over our empire?" Frank turned to follow her movement, brown eyes meeting her silver ones. "Would you believe me if I said it wasn't?" "No," she said flatly, stopping in front of him. "Your species has a reputation for cunning." "We also have a reputation for following our heart," he countered, sometimes to the point of absurdity. The Queen's brow furrowed, an oddly human expression on her alien features. "Explain." "You're beautiful," Frank said simply. "Not just physically, though you are stunning. But there's something in the way you carry yourself. Strength, yes, but also isolation. I recognized it because I've seen it in every commander I've served under. The weight of responsibility." "So this is pity?" Her voice dropped dangerously low. "Admiration," he corrected. "An attraction, and yes, maybe a touch of that famous human audacity that got us to the stars in the first place." Thindra studied him for a long moment, her anger seemingly replaced by curiosity. "You realize that by our customs, what you've wished for goes far beyond a simple dalliance? You've essentially asked for a permanent place at my side." "I know. And that cross-species relationships, while not forbidden, are highly controversial among my people?" I figured as much from the looks of horror in the throne room. She moved closer, close enough that he could feel the alien warmth radiating from her skin. "And it doesn't bother you that I could have you executed for this presumption?" Frank smiled, letting a hint of that human confidence shine through. "If you were going to execute me, you wouldn't have brought me to your private chambers to discuss it." A startled laugh escaped her, quickly stifled but genuine. "The reports about humans were right. You are impossibly bold." "We prefer optimistically persistent," he said, then grew serious. "Look, I know this is unconventional, but I'm not asking for your crown or your power. I'm asking for a chance to know the woman behind the Queen. And if I refuse, then I'll respectfully withdraw my wish and request something else. Maybe a nice fruit basket." This time her laugh was full and rich, echoing off the crystal walls. "By the stars, you are either the most foolish or the most clever being I've ever encountered." "I get that a lot," Frank admitted, "though usually it's both." Thindra moved to a nearby window, gazing out at the crystalline spires of her capital city. "Do you know why that law exists? The one about granting a wish to anyone who saves the monarch's life?" Frank joined her, maintaining a respectful distance. "I assumed it was to encourage heroic acts." "Partially," she said, "but it's also a test of character. What someone wishes for in that moment of triumph reveals their true nature." She turned to face him. "Most ask for wealth, power, or political favors. You asked for me. Just me." "Well, when you put it that way, it sounds rather romantic," he said with a grin. "It sounds human," she corrected, but there was no bite in her words. "Your species has always fascinated us. You're younger than most spacefaring races, technically inferior to many, and yet—" She gestured to him. "Here you stand, in my private chambers, having done what my best guards could not. We're full of surprises." "Indeed." She stepped closer, reaching out to touch his beard with evident curiosity. "Our physiologies are compatible, you know. It's one of the great mysteries that most humanoid species can interbreed." Frank's breath caught at her touch. "Is that so?" "Though there hasn't been a human-Australian pairing in, well, ever." Her fingers traced his jaw. "It would cause quite the scandal. I'm getting the impression you're not entirely opposed to that idea." Thindra's silver eyes sparkled with mischief. "Perhaps I'm curious about these human surprises you mentioned." "Your Majesty," a voice called through the chamber's communication system, "the Security Council awaits your presence." The Queen sighed, dropping her hand. "Duty calls, but this conversation isn't over, Frank Meiser. I look forward to continuing it," he said, then added with a wink, "Your Majesty." As she turned to leave, she paused at the door. "Oh, and Frank, if you're going to be spending time in my chambers, you might want to lose the tactical gear. It clashes with the decor." After she left, Frank looked down at his black combat outfit and laughed. Trust him to fall for the one woman in the galaxy who could make him feel underdressed while wearing military-grade armor. A soft chime drew his attention to a hidden panel in the wall, which slid open to reveal a selection of Australian formal wear in his size. "Well," he muttered, examining the elegant but alien clothing. "When in Rome." Frank adjusted the high collar of his Australian formal wear, a masterpiece of flowing silver fabric that somehow managed to look both elegant and militant. After a week in the palace, he was finally getting used to the way the bio-responsive material adjusted to his body temperature and movements. "You're wearing it wrong," Queen Thindra's voice carried a hint of amusement as she entered her private study. "The ceremonial clasps should cross left over right for warriors." "In my defense," Frank said, fixing the clasps, "Earth formal wear usually just involves not spilling anything on yourself." Her laugh echoed through the crystalline chamber. "Speaking of Earth customs, you handled the morning court session remarkably well. You mean when that noble called me a primitive genetic contamination and I didn't shoot him?" "Precisely." Thindra's crimson hair cascaded over her shoulders as she settled behind her desk, holographic displays springing to life around her. "Though I rather enjoyed your response." Frank grinned, remembering the nobleman's face when he'd calmly explained that humans had evolved past the need to compensate for personal inadequacies through elaborate titles. "Your Majesty," a voice interrupted through the communication system, "Lord Commander Thane requests an immediate audience regarding the assassination investigation." Thindra's expression turned serious. "Send him in." The Lord Commander was everything Frank expected from an alien military leader, tall, imposing, and radiating barely concealed disdain for the human in the room. His ceremonial armor shifted colors like oil on water. "My queen," Thane bowed, then straightened. "We've analyzed the assassin's equipment. The stealth technology is troubling." "Explain," Thindra commanded. "It's Proximan design." Frank felt his muscles tense. The Battle of Proxima hadn't just been humanity's introduction to galactic society. It had been a three-way conflict between humans, Proximans, and Australians. "That's impossible," Thindra said. "The peace treaty might be worth less than the quantum paper it's written on," Frank interrupted. Both aliens turned to him. "Sorry, but I've seen this before. After Earth's first contact war, we discovered cells of hardliners who refused to accept peace. They'd rather burn everything down than adapt to a new reality." Thane's expression darkened. "This is an internal matter." "No," Thindra cut him off. "He's right. And as my chosen companion, he has every right to participate in this investigation." Frank caught the slight pause before chosen companion and fought back a smile. The court was still trying to figure out exactly what to call him. So far, they'd avoided anything that might imply intimacy, despite the growing tension between him and Thindra during their private moments. "Speaking of which," Frank said, "I'd like to examine the assassin's gear myself. Human special forces dealt with Proximan stealth tech during the war. I might spot something your analysts missed." Thane looked like he'd rather eat his own armor, but Thindra nodded. "Make it happen, Commander." After Thane left, Thindra turned to Frank. "You're thinking something you're not saying." "Several things, actually." He moved closer to her desk. "First, Proximan stealth tech requires regular maintenance by specialized technicians. Whoever supplied it has a support network here on Australis. And second, the timing is interesting. An assassination attempt right when a human delegate is present? It's either meant to frame Earth and destroy the Alliance, or, Thindra prompted, or someone's very unhappy about the possibility of human influence in the Australian court." He met her silver eyes. "Particularly close influence." Thindra stood, moving around her desk to face him. "You think this is about us?" Us, the Alliance, everything we represent. He reached out, tucking a strand of crimson hair behind her ear. Change scares people, especially people in power. She leaned into his touch, a gesture that would have scandalized the court. You're not scared. Why, terrified, he admitted with a grin. But humans are good at pushing through fear. That's how we survived on Earth long enough to reach the stars. Speaking of survival, she said, stepping back reluctantly, you have your first etiquette lesson with Master Prell this afternoon. Frank groaned. I'd rather face another assassin. The old master isn't that bad. He made me spend 3 hours yesterday learning the proper way to eat soup. Did you learn it? Yes, Frank admitted. Apparently, I've been doing it wrong my entire life. Thindra's laughter was interrupted by another chime from the communication system. Your Majesty, the Proximan ambassador demands an immediate audience. Well, Frank said, straightening his formal wear. This should be interesting. You're not attending this one, Thindra said firmly. Like hell, I'm not. His expression turned serious. Someone tried to kill you using Proximan tech. Where you go, I go. They stared at each other for a long moment, neither willing to back down. Finally, Thindra sighed. Fine, but try not to start an interstellar incident. Me, never. He offered his arm in the proper Australian manner. Shall we go scandalize your court some more? As they walked to the throne room, Frank couldn't help but notice how perfectly they moved together, how natural it felt. The assassination attempt, the court intrigue, the cultural clashes. None of it mattered when she was by his side. Of course, that's when the explosion rocked the palace. The explosion sent crystalline shards raining through the palace corridors. Frank's combat instincts took over instantly. He pulled Thindra behind a massive pillar, shielding her body with his own as secondary detonations rocked the structure. Well, he said, his formal wear's adaptive fabric already hardening into makeshift armor. I guess the Proximan ambassador will have to wait. Frank, Thindra's voice was steady despite the chaos. The blast came from the diplomatic wing, where the ambassador would be arriving. He cursed under his breath. This isn't an assassination attempt anymore. It's a coup. The palace's emergency systems activated, crystalline walls shifting to create defensive barriers. Lord Commander Thane's voice boomed through the communication system. Multiple hostiles detected. Protect the Queen. Frank reached for a weapon that wasn't there, missing his tactical gear. Please tell me there's an armory nearby. Thindra's silver eyes sparkled with unexpected mischief. Better. She pressed her hand against the wall, and a hidden panel slid open, revealing a cache of advanced weaponry. I had this installed after the first attempt on my life. I think I'm in love, Frank muttered, grabbing what looked like an Australian pulse rifle. You know how to use one of these? I'm a queen, not a figurehead. She selected her own weapon with practiced ease. The real question is, can you handle Australian tech? A group of armed figures in stealth suits rounded the corner. Frank answered by dropping 3 of them with precise shots, the pulse rifle's neural interface adapting to his human reflexes. That answer your question? He grinned. Show off. But there was admiration in her voice. They moved through the palace corridors in perfect sync, covering each other's blind spots. Frank couldn't help but notice how gracefully Thindra fought, her formal gown somehow never impeding her movement. The diplomatic wing is just ahead, she said as they reached a secure junction. But something's wrong. These attackers, their movements are too coordinated. They've had inside help, Frank agreed. The question is, from where? The Proximans? Your court? Both? Before Thindra could respond, Lord Commander Thane's voice crackled through their communication devices. My queen, the Proximan ambassador, he's dead, killed in the initial blast. Convenient, Frank muttered. Or intentional, Thindra added. A perfect catalyst for war. They shared a look of understanding. Someone was trying to shatter the fragile peace between their peoples, and they were the only ones who could stop it. The sound of approaching footsteps had them both taking defensive positions. But instead of more attackers, Ambassador Thyron appeared, his silvery skin marked with soot. Thank the stars you're both alive, he gasped. The Proximan delegation? It wasn't them. Their shuttle was intercepted and replaced before it reached the palace. The real ambassador is still in orbit. How do you know this? Thindra demanded. Because, a new voice said, I told him. From the shadows emerged a figure that made Frank's blood run cold. Admiral Jenkins of Earth's Special Operations Command wasn't supposed to be anywhere near Australis. Sir? Frank straightened instinctively. What are you doing here? Why? Preventing a war. Jenkins's weathered face was grim. We've been tracking a splinter group, humans, Proximans, and yes, even Australians, all working together to maintain the old conflicts. They call themselves the Purists. Of course, Thindra's eyes narrowed. The assassination attempt, the Proximan tech, to this attack, they're trying to destroy everything we built. And more specifically, where Frank added, they're trying to prevent what we represent. Jenkins nodded. A human-Australian union, it would destroy their entire narrative about the impossibility of true cooperation between species. A massive explosion from above sent debris raining down. Frank pulled Thindra clear as part of the ceiling collapsed. Philosophy later, he shouted. We need to reach the command center and get word out about what's really happening here. Agreed, Thindra said, then turned to Jenkins. Admiral, can Earth's forces confirm the real Proximan ambassador's location? Already done. They're holding position, waiting for our signal. Then let's move, Frank said. But first, he turned to Thindra, pulled her close, and kissed her deeply. The others tactfully looked away, though he caught Jenkins's slight smile. When they parted, Thindra's silver eyes were wide with surprise and something else. What was that for? In case we die horribly in the next few minutes, he grinned. Also, I've been wanting to do that all week. Humans, she muttered, but her lips curved upward. Always choosing the most dramatic moments. If you two are quite finished, Jenkins interrupted, we have a conspiracy to expose and a war to prevent. They moved out as a group, fighting their way through waves of purest forces. Frank couldn't help but notice how well Thindra adapted to human tactical strategies, just as he learned to incorporate Australian battle techniques. The command center is through here, Thindra said as they reached a massive door, but they'll have it heavily guarded. Good thing you have humanity's finest at your side, Jenkins said, pulling out what looked like a quantum grenade. Ready to show these purists why they should fear cooperation between our species? Frank looked at Thindra, saw the same fierce determination in her eyes that he felt. Ready when you are, Your Majesty. Together then, she said, taking his hand. Let's show them what happens when they threaten our future. The door exploded inward, and they charged through as one, human and alien, united against those who would keep them apart. The command center's quantum computers hummed with energy as Frank and Thindra raced against time. Admiral Jenkins and Ambassador Thyron secured the perimeter, while Lord Commander Thane coordinated palace defenses from a secondary station. The broadcast channels are being jammed. Thindra's fingers danced across holographic interfaces. Someone's flooding the networks with false reports of the Proximan ambassador's death. Frank worked at a neighboring console, his week of crash course Australian tech training proving invaluable. Got something. The jamming signal's coming from inside the palace? Impossible, Thane barked. All communication systems are compromised, a new voice interrupted. The holoscreens flickered, revealing the face of Master Prell, Thindra's etiquette instructor, as they have been for years. The man who taught me proper soup-eating technique is a purist conspirator? Frank couldn't help but quip. I knew those spoon rules were evil. Your human humor won't save you, Prell sneered. Do you know why the Queen's wish-granting tradition exists, human? It's not about rewarding heroism. It's about maintaining genetic purity. Thindra's face paled. No. Yes, my queen. For millennia, only the strongest Australians could get close enough to save a monarch's life. The wish tradition ensured our bloodlines remained superior. But now? He glared at Frank. A human corrupts our greatest tradition. That's not corruption, Frank argued, his hands never stopping their work on the console. It's evolution, change, growth. And there's something you don't know, Thindra added, her voice carrying an edge that made everyone turn. Something even I didn't understand until now. She pressed a sequence of commands and ancient data scrolled across the screens. The first queen of Australia was human. The silence that followed was deafening. Impossible, Prell whispered. The records were hidden, encrypted in our oldest genetic archives, Thindra continued. Earth wasn't humanity's first journey to the stars. Millennia ago, a human colony ship crashed here. Their leader, a woman named Sarah Jenkins, helped the primitive Australian tribes unite and advance. Frank turned to Admiral Jenkins, who nodded slowly. My family kept the secret for generations, waiting for the right moment. When you made your wish, Frank, we knew the time had come. The wish tradition, Thindra's voice grew stronger, wasn't about genetic purity. It was about maintaining the connection between our peoples, hoping that one day we'd find each other again. Frank reached for her hand, feeling the warmth of her blue skin against his. And now we have? Lies! Prell's image distorted with rage. Your union will never be accepted. Actually, Admiral Jenkins smiled, it already has been. He activated his own console, revealing feeds from across the galaxy. The real Proxima ambassador was broadcasting from orbit, denouncing the attack. Earth's fleets were moving to support Australis. And most importantly, the Australian public was watching, learning the truth about their heritage. You see, Prell, Frank said, while you were monologuing, we weren't just standing here looking pretty, though we do that very well. Thindra squeezed his hand, fighting back a smile. The jamming signal's been reversed. Everything you just said, the whole galaxy heard it. Including, Thane added with satisfaction, your confession of treason. Security forces burst into Prell's location. The old master's final cry of rage cut off as the transmission ended. Well, Frank turned to Thindra. That was dramatic, though I'm still processing the fact that I'm apparently dating royalty from both our species. Dating? Thindra arched an eyebrow. Is that what humans call it when they use an ancient tradition to bind themselves to a queen? Speaking of binding, Admiral Jenkins interrupted, there's something else you should know about the genetic archives. He brought up another file, this one showing complex DNA patterns. The reason human-Australian pairs are so rare isn't because they're impossible, it's because they're too possible. The combination creates something unique. What do you mean? Frank asked, though from Thindra's sudden intake of breath, she already knew. The child of a human and an Australian, Jenkins explained, inherits the best of both species, enhanced strength, advanced cognitive abilities, and most importantly, a natural ability to unite others. Like Sarah Jenkins did, Thindra whispered, her free hand moving unconsciously to her abdomen. Like our child will. Frank's eyes widened. Are you? I wasn't sure until now, she said softly. But seeing these genetic markers? Yes. It seems your wish had more immediate consequences than either of us expected. Their moment was interrupted by Ambassador Thyron clearing his throat. As touching as this is, we still have a palace full of conspirators to deal with. You're right, Frank straightened, though he kept hold of Thindra's hand. First, we secure the palace, then we deal with any remaining purists. And then, Thindra finished, her silver eyes meeting his brown ones, we begin something new. Together. Together, he agreed, then grinned. Though we should probably get married before the baby starts showing. I hear Australian court gossip is brutal. Oh, now you care about proper protocol, she teased. Only when it involves making an honest queen out of you. Admiral Jenkins sighed. If you two are quite finished, we have a galaxy to stabilize. But as they moved out to secure their future, Frank couldn't help but think that some destabilization wasn't such a bad thing. After all, it had brought him here, to her, to a future neither of them could have imagined. And really, wasn't that the most human thing of all? 2 weeks after the purist conspiracy's exposure, the celestial palace sparkled with renewed brilliance. The damaged sections had been repaired with advanced crystalline technology, the new formations somehow more beautiful than before, much like the relationship that had emerged from the chaos. Frank stood on a private balcony, adjusting his ceremonial attire. The formal wear now felt natural, though he'd insisted on incorporating elements of his Earth military dress uniform into the design. The result was a striking blend of human and Australian aesthetics, much like his upcoming marriage would be. Nervous? Admiral Jenkins asked, joining him at the railing. About marrying the most powerful woman in the sector while the entire galaxy watches? Frank chuckled, terrified, but in a good way. Your father would be proud, Jenkins said softly. He always believed humanity's destiny lay in the stars. Frank turned, surprised. You knew my father? He was part of the original team that discovered the ancient genetic archives, Jenkins explained. Your assignment to protect Ambassador Thyron wasn't random, Frank. We've been watching you your entire career, waiting for the right moment. So my wish wasn't as spontaneous as everyone thought? The wish was all you, Jenkins smiled. We just made sure you were in position to make it, though I don't think anyone expected you to be quite so direct about it. That's what makes him perfect, Thindra's voice carried from the doorway. Both men turned, and Frank felt his breath catch. She wore a gown that seemed woven from starlight itself, the fabric shifting between deep blue and brilliant white. Her crimson hair was adorned with crystalline flowers that caught the light like living gems. But it was her radiant smile that truly captivated him. "You're not supposed to see me before the ceremony," she teased, approaching them. "It's bad luck on Earth, isn't it?" "Pretty sure we've used up all our bad luck," Frank replied, pulling her close. "Besides, Australian tradition says the bride and groom should share the morning meal on their wedding day." "Someone's been paying attention to their cultural lessons," she noted with approval. "Well, I had proper motivation." His hand rested gently on her abdomen, still flat but carrying their miracle. "How are you feeling?" "The morning sickness is interesting," she admitted. "Apparently human Australian pregnancies come with unique challenges. But the medical team is fascinated by every detail." "Speaking of details," Jenkins interrupted, "the delegates are arriving, including some unexpected guests." They moved to the balcony's edge, watching as ships descended through Australis's atmosphere. Among them was a vessel that made Frank whistle in appreciation, a Proximan battle cruiser, its hull decorated with peace markings. "The Proximan High Council sent their heir apparent," Thindra explained. "Apparently our union has inspired them to reconsider their own isolation policies." "Nothing like a good wedding to bring people together," Frank quipped. "Though I hope they're not expecting party favors. I draw the line at commemorative quantum crystals." Thindra laughed, that sound carrying across the crystalline spires. "Actually, we do have something special planned. The geneticists have been working on a presentation about human-Australian compatibility. They think our child might be just the first of many. A new generation of natural diplomats," Jenkins nodded, "born to bridge the gap between species." "No pressure on the kid or anything," Frank muttered, but his smile was genuine. A chime echoed through the palace, signaling the approaching ceremony. Jenkins excused himself, leaving the couple alone for a moment. "Having second thoughts?" Thindra asked, her silver eyes searching his. "About you?" "Never." He brushed a strand of crimson hair from her face. "About having to dance the traditional spiral of unity in front of galactic leaders?" "Absolutely terrified." "You'll do fine," she assured him. "Just remember the steps Master Prell's replacement taught you." "Ah yes, the new etiquette master. Much less evil than the last one." Their laughter was interrupted by Lord Commander Thane's arrival. "My queen, honored consort, it's time." As they walked toward the Great Hall, Frank reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. From a simple protection detail to becoming the catalyst for galactic unity. It was the kind of story that would seem impossible if he wasn't living it. The ceremony itself was a magnificent blend of traditions. Human vows of loyalty and love mixed with Australian rituals of binding. The Proximan heir presented them with a peace crystal of unprecedented size. Earth's representatives brought water from every ocean, symbolizing humanity's blessing. But it was during their first dance that the true magnitude of their union became clear. As they moved through the traditional spiral, their bodies in perfect sync, the crystalline floor beneath them began to glow. Ancient patterns, hidden for millennia, awakened at their touch. "It's responding to our combined DNA," Thindra whispered as they danced. "Just like in the old stories about Sarah Jenkins." "Think our little one will be able to do this too?" Frank asked, leading her through another turn. "Our little one will do amazing things," she replied. "But right now, I'm more interested in what their father is going to do about the fact that I'm wearing something very traditional and very little under this gown." Frank nearly missed a step, earning a smirk from his new wife. "You're evil," he muttered. "I love it." The celebration continued long into the night, a testament to the new era their union represented. But for Frank and Thindra, the most important moment came later, in the quiet of their chambers, when they could simply be together, not as symbols or leaders, but as two beings who had found each other across the vastness of space. "So," Frank said as they stood on their private balcony, watching the 3 moons of Australis rise, "was it worth saying yes to my wish?" Thindra's answer was to pull him into a kiss that promised many more adventures to come. 1 year later, the Celestial Palace's medical wing hummed with anticipation. Frank paced the crystalline corridor, his formal attire disheveled from hours of waiting. The combined medical team of human and Australian doctors had been prepared for every possibility, but the birth of the first official human-Australian hybrid in millennia was still uncharted territory. "If you wear a hole in my floor, you're paying for it," Thindra's voice called from within the birthing chamber, somehow managing to sound both exhausted and amused. "Pretty sure that's impossible," he replied, entering the room. "These crystals are harder than—" His voice trailed off as he saw their daughter for the first time. She was perfect. Tiny fingers, blue skin a shade lighter than her mother's, and wisps of hair that seemed to shift between brown and crimson in the light. But it was her eyes that caught his attention. One brown, one silver, both filled with impossible wisdom. "She's beautiful," he whispered, moving to Thindra's side. "She's also broadcasting," one of the doctors noted, pointing to the medical monitors. The crystalline walls of the chamber were pulsing with soft light, responding to the baby's presence. "Just like the wedding dance," Thindra smiled, though her eyes never left their daughter. "She's already connecting with the ancient technology." The moment was interrupted by urgent footsteps. Admiral Jenkins burst into the room, his usual composure slightly ruffled. "We have a situation." "Of course we do," Frank sighed, "because the birth of our miracle child couldn't go smoothly." "The remaining purists," Jenkins explained, "they've launched a desperate attack on the palace's power core. If they destabilize it, the whole city could be destroyed," Thindra finished, already trying to rise. "Oh, no you don't," Frank pushed her gently back. "You just gave birth. This one's on me." "Us," Jenkins corrected. "Lord Commander Thane's forces are already responding, but they're having trouble with the ancient defense systems. The purists somehow gained control of them." Frank looked at his daughter, then at his wife. "Actually, I have an idea, but it's crazy, even by human standards." "Those are my favorite kind," Thindra said, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You want to use her connection to the crystals?" "Not exactly." He carefully lifted their daughter. "I want to use our connection, all of us, the same way the floor responded to us during the wedding dance." "It could work," one of the Australian doctors interjected. "The ancient texts speak of Sarah Jenkins using her child's abilities to unite the tribes." "This is insane," Jenkins muttered. "Using a newborn to hack a planetary defense system?" "Welcome to the family," Frank grinned, then turned serious. "Thindra?" She nodded. "Do it. But if anything happens to either of them, I know you'll kill me after you save us all." With their daughter cradled carefully in one arm, Frank placed his other hand on the chamber wall. Thindra reached out, touching both him and the baby. The effect was immediate. The crystalline structure of the entire palace lit up like a supernova. Through their combined connection, they could feel everything. The purists in the power core, the defending forces, every crystal and circuit. Their daughter cooed, and suddenly the ancient systems responded. Defense turrets activated, but instead of firing, they emitted pulses of energy that disabled weapons. Barriers rose, containing the purists without harming them. "Impossible," Jenkins breathed, watching the security feeds. "She's not just controlling the systems, she's improving them." "No," Thindra corrected softly. We are. All of us. This is what the Wish tradition was really about, bringing us together, not just as individuals, but as species." The crisis was over in minutes, the purists contained without a single casualty. But the changes their daughter had initiated continued. Throughout the city, ancient systems long dormant came alive. Their purposes transformed from defense to cooperation. "Well," Frank said as they watched the light show from the medical chamber's window, "I think we need to name her now, preferably something that lives up to this moment." "Sarah," Thindra suggested, "after the first human queen, but with an Australian middle name, Luminara. It means bringer of light." "Sarah Luminara Meiser," Frank tested the name. "Poor kid's going to have a lot to live up to." "She already has," Jenkins noted, reviewing reports on his quantum pad. "The changes she initiated? The applications for peaceful cooperation between species are endless. The Proximans are already requesting permission to study the modified systems." "Speaking of modifications," one of the doctors interrupted, "you might want to see this." She pointed to new scans of their daughter. Her DNA, it's not just a combination of human and Australian genes. It's evolving, creating something entirely new. Like humanity's next step, Frank asked. Everyone's next step, Thindra corrected. She's what we could all become, working together. Little Sarah chose that moment to open her mismatched eyes and smile, causing every crystal in the room to pulse with warm light. You know, Frank said, settling beside his wife and daughter, when I made that wish, I thought I was being bold just asking for you. Turns out I was asking for the future of both our species. Technically, Thindra smirked, I still couldn't refuse, even if it meant changing the galaxy. Best tradition ever, he grinned, leaning in to kiss her. Sarah cooed again, and the lights formed patterns overhead. Stars and galaxies dancing in crystalline light, a promise of adventures yet to come. As the small family watched their daughter's first light show, Frank reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them here. From a simple protection detail to a wish that changed everything. From an angry queen to his soulmate, from two separate species to the beginning of something entirely new. And it all started because he was crazy enough to wish for the one thing everyone thought impossible. Some wishes, it turned out, were worth defying the universe for,